For 10 long years, he played the most beautiful song in the world on a forgotten street corner, and not a single soul ever truly heard it. His melody was a ghost, a whisper of heartbreak and hope, completely lost in the roar of a city that never sleeps and never listens. Imagine pouring your soul into the worn-out strings of your guitar for 3,650 days, offering a piece of your very being to a world that just walks on by. Until one day, a man who had everything stopped. He stopped because he finally heard the one thing he'd been missing. For a decade, Samuel Jones was basically part of the city's architecture. He was as permanent and as overlooked as the cracks in the sidewalk on the corner of 8th and Elm. Every morning, as the city kicked into its frantic rush, he'd set down his battered guitar case, its velvet interior faded to a pale, tired purple. He'd take out his old acoustic friend, Eleanor, its wood scarred with the stories of 1,000 sunrises and 1,000 lonely nights. Then he'd play. It was always the same song, a melody that rose and fell like a slow, deep breath, holding both the sweetness of a first love and the gut-wrenching sorrow of a final goodbye. He called it Lena's Waltz, a tribute to his late wife, the woman whose laughter had been the only music he'd ever needed. The song was all he had left of her, a perfect, heartbreaking memory turned into notes. He played with a quiet, desperate passion. His calloused fingers would dance over the frets, his eyes closed, lost in the world the music built around him. He wasn't just playing notes, he was telling a story. But in the river of faces that flowed past, no one ever stopped to hear it. They were a blur of hurried footsteps, ringing phones, and eyes that looked anywhere but at him. People might drop a few coins into his open case, a reflex of charity without any real connection. They saw a homeless man, a fixture, a problem to dismiss with pocket change. They never saw the artist. They never heard the masterpiece being offered to them for free day after day. The song was a secret whispered into a hurricane, and Samuel had become invisible. But what he didn't know was that his unwavering faith in this one song had given it a power he could never have imagined. A power that was about to be unleashed. Meanwhile, across town in a tower of glass and steel, Arthur. Vance was the king of an empire he'd built with his own 2 hands. His name was whispered with fear and reverence in boardrooms all over the world. He was a titan of industry, a man who could move markets with a single word. His penthouse office was a monument to his success, decorated with art that cost more than most people make in a lifetime. But the silence in that vast room perfectly mirrored his life, beautiful, expensive, and completely empty. Arthur had everything a man could ever want, and none of the things he truly needed. His days were a long, scheduled sequence of meetings, calls, and strategic moves. He was surrounded by people, but he wasn't connected to any of them. He had conquered the world, but he'd lost himself along the way. The thrill of the deal was long gone, replaced by a deep, gnawing exhaustion. He'd built a gilded cage and was now starving for a feeling he couldn't even name. That afternoon, he closed a 9-figure deal. It should have been a huge victory, but he felt nothing, just a hollow echo where joy should have been. As he was about to leave for yet another sterile charity gala, he told his driver to take a different route. A detour through the heart of the city he owned but didn't know anymore. The sleek, black car purred to a stop in an unexpected traffic jam on 8th and Elm. Sitting in the plush leather interior, a fortress of silence against the city's noise, Arthur felt a familiar wave of irritation. He was about to bark at his driver to turn around when a sound, thin as a spider's thread, pierced through the armored glass. It was a melody, faint, distant, but somehow crystal clear. It wasn't just music. It was a feeling. A haunting, beautiful sadness that pulled at something deep inside his chest. Without thinking, he ended the pointless call he was on. "Stop here," he said to his driver, his voice strangely quiet. The stunned driver simply nodded. Arthur Vance, a man whose time was measured in thousands of dollars a minute, stepped out of his car onto the crowded sidewalk. People instinctively moved for the expensive suit and the air of authority around him, but Arthur didn't notice. His entire world had shrunk to the man on the corner and the heartbreakingly beautiful song pouring from that old guitar. He stood perfectly still and just listened. For the first time in 20 years, he wasn't analyzing or calculating. He was simply feeling. The music spoke a language his soul remembered but his mind had forgotten. It spoke of love and loss, of holding on and letting go. Each note was a drop of pure, unfiltered emotion, the exact opposite of his sterile, calculated world. In that song, he saw the life he'd had before the empire, the woman he'd lost to his own ambition, the authenticity he had traded for success. The song swelled to a hopeful, sorrowful peak, then faded. The sounds of the city rushed back in, harsh and loud. Samuel opened his eyes, his daily ritual complete. He looked up and saw a man in a perfect suit standing before him, a raw, unguarded look on his face. Arthur Vance stepped forward, ignoring the guitar case. He looked right into Samuel's eyes. "I haven't felt anything real in 20 years, Arthur said, his voice thick with emotion. "Your song just changed that." He paused, gathering himself. "I'm not just going to give you money," he said, the words full of a new certainty. "I'm going to give you a stage. The world needs to hear that song." For Samuel, it felt like the world tilted on its axis. The words just hung in the air, more unbelievable than any dream. The billionaire, Arthur Vance, wasn't just making a promise. He was starting a revolution. What followed was a whirlwind. One day, Samuel was invisible on a street corner. The next, he was signing a recording contract with Vance's own brand-new music label, Authentic Records. He was whisked into a state-of-the-art recording studio that felt like a cathedral of sound. He was surrounded by some of the most talented musicians in the world, who, after hearing Lena's waltz just once on his old guitar, looked at him not with pity, but with a kind of awe. The recording session was magic. The producers didn't try to change the song. They just wanted to capture the raw, honest soul that Arthur Vance had heard on the street. They added a gentle string section that felt like a sunrise and a piano that echoed the song's quiet heartache. When the song was released, it wasn't a slow burn. It was an explosion. It shot past all the marketing gimmicks and connected directly with the hearts of millions. It was on every radio station, its haunting melody becoming the soundtrack to people's lives. News headlines that once focused on Vance's corporate takeovers now read, "The Sparrow's Elegy, an overnight sensation 10 years in the making." They told the incredible story of the homeless musician and the billionaire who actually stopped to listen. 6 months later, Samuel Jones, dressed in a simple dark suit that felt as foreign as a spaceship, walked onto the stage of the most famous concert hall in the world. As the lights came up on a sold-out crowd, he sat down, held Eleanor, and scanned the audience until he found him. In the front row, Arthur Vance sat, not as a titan of industry, but as a man watching a miracle he had helped create. He gave Samuel a single proud nod. Samuel took a deep breath and began to play. The same song, the same notes, the same soul. But this time, the world wasn't walking by. This time, the world was listening. As the final note of Lena's waltz faded into the huge silence of the concert hall, the applause that followed wasn't just noise. It was a tidal wave of emotion, of gratitude, and of shared humanity. The story of Samuel and Arthur really boils down to one simple truth. One person stopped. One person chose to truly listen. And in doing that, they didn't just change a life. They rewrote a story. It just goes to show you that the greatest treasures aren't always locked away in boardrooms or bank vaults. They're often hidden in plain sight, waiting in the quiet corners of the world for just one person to pay attention. Talent is everywhere. Genius is everywhere. But opportunity is not. It's created when one person decides to see the value in another that the rest of the world has overlooked. So, think about your own journey. You may not have billions to give, but you have something far more precious: your attention, your kindness, your belief in someone. We all have the power to stop and truly listen. If this story moved you, subscribe for more tales that inspire. And the next time you walk past a street performer, a quiet coworker, or anyone who seems invisible, remember this story. And maybe, just maybe, stop and listen. You never know what masterpiece you might discover.